Hi, my name's Kat, but you can call me Wheelie. I'd like to show you how to make my puff stitch slouchy. I have made this slouchy for so many different people, for my mum and her friends, and for my young nieces, as well as my own friends, and it looks good on everyone. So I hope you enjoy the tutorial because you are going to look beautiful in your new slouchy. Let's have a closer look at this slouchy before we get started. We're going to begin with a magic circle and we're going to work in a continuous round, so there is no seam. The body of it is worked in a simple puff stitch. We've got lots of lovely slouch at the back, but when we get to the band, we'll work some decreases to bring it in a bit so it sits better on your head. The band is worked in a camel stitch, which gives this nice V effect and also contributes to the band being really snug without being tight. I've popped a button on mine because buttons are cute, but it also helps you to find the front of it when you're putting it on. Now, if you're a beginner, I will be walking you through each of the stitches carefully, but camel stitches can be fiddly, so if you're a total beginner, you might prefer to start with something like my soft and simple slouchy for total beginners. Otherwise, if you're feeling adventurous, this hat is definitely worth the effort because it is beautiful. I'm using this very basic acrylic yarn I picked up at Kmart. It feels quite nice and soft. It's a matte rather than a shiny yarn, and the colour's somewhere between, I don't know, a coral pink and a candy pink, or colour 1002. Isn't that descriptive? So you can use any yarn you like as long as it is a 8-ply, DK or light worsted. You'll need a 4mm crochet hook for this pattern, and you'll also need a pair of scissors for doing your snipping. You will need to have a couple of stitch markers on hand, so a safety pin will do at a pinch. You'll need to have a darning needle to tie in your ends and to sew on your button. I'm using this wooden, rather rustic, knocked around looking one that I found at the bottom of my button box. Grab your hook and your yarn and let's get started. I'm going to begin by making a magic circle, but if you loathe magic circles or if you have a go at it and it just doesn't work for you this time, you can chain 4, slip stitch it together to make a little circle, and meet me at round 1. I pop instructions for each round up in the top left corner, and in the description box below there are timestamps so you can jump between the rounds. So head to round 1 if you want to, otherwise let's make a magic circle. So I've got the yarn and I'm laying it across my palm and holding the tail in place between my pinky and my ring finger. Then I take the working end of the yarn and bring it behind my hand and then over my palm to make a cross, like so. Now I turn my hand over and I've got 2 lines of yarn and I've got the tail poking up. So I'm bringing the working end right around under my palm so I can hold it in place with my thumb. Slide your hook under this piece of yarn and over that piece and pull it under and do a little twist. Ta-da! Now to secure your magic circle, you need to chain 1, and this bit can seem fiddly. I'm going to pop that tail out of the way so it doesn't intrude on what you can see. You need to make a chain with that bit of the yarn, so slip your hook under and hold the yarn in place on your palm with your thumb and you'll be able to chain 1 quite simply. I think it can seem a little bit like hand gymnastics. So now we have our magic circle. I'm going to tighten mine up a little bit. I like it to be a bit smaller to work into. When you're working your stitches in round 1, make sure you're working them over the tail as well as over the circle. Otherwise, when you pull on this tail to tighten it up, it won't be very magical, it will just be circly. So let's start round 1, chain 1, and round 1 is 10 puff stitches worked into this circle. For the purpose of this pattern, this is a puff stitch. Yarn over, insert your hook. You have 2 loops and the circle on your hook. Yarn over and pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, insert into the circle again. You have 4 loops in the circle on your hook. Yarn over and pull through the circle and pull up a loop. And you now have 5 loops on your hook. And you're going to yarn over and pull through all 5. Now, if you want to, you can pop a stitch marker in the top of that puff stitch to help you find it when we start round 2. This is a pretty stitch marker heavy pattern. I'm going to use the stitch marker a lot, and I even use 2 when we get to the band. So when you use a stitch marker, catch both loops of that little V at the top of the stitch with your stitch marker. Let's make another puff stitch together. We're going to yarn over and insert the hook. You've got 2 loops and the circle on your hook. Yarn over and pull through the circle so you have 3 loops. Yarn over, insert into the circle and pull up another loop. 5 loops. Yarn over and scream at the screen because there's no way you can get through all of those loops in one go. And if that's you, just go through them 1 or 2 at a time. And honestly, by the end of this pattern, once you've made a puff stitch slouchy, you'll probably be great at puff stitches. I have got 4 tips for puff stitches though. Yarn over and insert your hook and pull up a loop and pull it up nice and high. You want tall puff stitches. If you make little ones down here, nobody is able to pull through that, just nobody. So yarn over and pull up another loop and hold on to the bottom of the stitch when you're yarning over and pulling through. And by holding on to that stitch, you create a bit of tension and sort of a tunnel, and you'll find your hook slides through more smoothly. Now, give yourself some yarn to work with. Don't have too much tension between you and the ball. If you've got it really tight here, you're going to find that it's really hard to make a puff stitch. So loosen up a bit and unwind a bit, make some terrible puns, and it is easier to puff stitch. Finally, some yarn just splits. Don't use that yarn for puff stitching. Save it for something else. It's not you, it's the yarn. So while I was telling you not to have too much tension between you and the ball, I kind of have the opposite problem going at the moment because this Kmart ball of yarn, which I'm actually really liking, it doesn't unroll easily from the center. You have to unwind it from the outside, and I decided to unwind a whole bunch of it, and I've got it in my lap. I'm kind of wearing it and it's getting tangled. So it's like I've decided to keep warm by wearing the yarn just wrapped around me rather than bothering to make anything from it. Yeah, it's a really good look. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling and concentrate on these puff stitches. We need 10 for round 1, and I think I'm nearly there. Okay. Now, make sure you count because this will not work if you have 11 or 9. It'll only work if you have 10. So that's our first one that the stitch marker is in, that little V shape there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Goldfish brain. You can also count them from the side, so that is a puff stitch there. And you see how the little V actually sits sort of to the right of it? I used to find that very confusing when I was first counting my stitches. So that shape there is 1, that's 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, yeah, I had to double check, that really is 9. Sorry about that. One more puff stitch and then we have finished round 1. And then we need to tighten up our magic circle just a bit, not completely. Just want it tight enough so that you've still got a little hole in there, but your ends are coming together so that you'll be able to work the first stitch in round 2. And the first stitch in round 2 goes right where that stitch marker is. Keep that stitch marker handy, or let it slide onto your lap, whatever works for you. We're going to not slip stitch this together. We're going to work a continuous round, which means we're going to put our puff stitch there. So we yarn over, insert our hook into that stitch. So you've got 2 loops of the stitch on it, and you've got the 2 loops. Then you yarn over and pull through the stitch. You've got 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over again, go back into that stitch again. So you now got 4 loops on your hook plus the top of that stitch. Yarn over, pull through the stitch. Now we have 5 loops on the hook, and we're going to yarn over and go through all 5. Now bring your stitch marker back in and mark that first stitch in round 2. Catch that little V, because working in a continuous round, it is tricky if you lose track of where the beginning of your round is. So this round is called an increase round, which means at the end of the round we're going to have more stitches than we have in the round below. You can tighten up your circle here too. And for this round, round 2, the pattern is that we're going to increase every stitch, which means every stitch in the row below is going to get 2 stitches. So this first one is going to get another puff stitch. So I've yarned over and inserted, I'm yarning over and I'm pulling up a loop, yarning over, inserting again and pulling up another loop. Got 5 loops on the hook now, and I'm going to yarn over and go through all 5. There we are. We're going to do that in the next stitch too. So see, this stitch has 2 stitches coming out of it. This one has none. So 2 need to go in here. It's just like the row below, but we're working into the top of stitches, which is actually, I think, a little more stable than working into your magic circle, which always feels a little bit, I don't know, a little bit sort of wobbly and dangerous. So hopefully that makes sense. 2 in this one, 2 in that one, 2 in that one, all the way back around till you're right before the stitch marker. So you pause here and I will meet you when you hit the stitch marker. I'm just putting my last couple of puff stitches in for round 2, and I'm wondering, how are you finding your puff stitches? I'd be really interested to know whether by the end of round 2 you're starting to feel like puff stitches are your friend. Maybe your next pattern you could try the big ones where you pull through 7, 9 or even 11 loops, or you may be still finding them quite tricky enough with just the 5. So end of round 2, we're going to head into round 3, which means we have to get rid of this stitch marker, but just for now, don't get rid of it completely. Round 3 is still an increase round, but we're only going to increase every second stitch. That means we put 1 puff stitch into this first stitch space from the round below. And we're going to mark that spot so we can find the beginning of the next round. The next stitch space is going to get 2 puff stitches, so 2 puffs just there. And the pattern's going to be 1 puff and then 2 puffs in the next space, 1 puff and then 2 puffs in the next space. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll get you to pause the video and keep repeating that pattern and meet me when you're nearing the stitch marker, and I will show you how to tackle the next round. So that's the end of the round. Just double check that you've kept to the pattern the whole way around, that you've got 2 and then 1, 2 and then 1 all the way around, because if you kind of mess up the pattern at this point, you don't just mess up your stitch count, you mess up the shape of the top of your hat, which is not good. So for the next round, we're going to put 1 stitch in this spot, and we're going to increase every 3rd stitch. So for our last round, we increased every 2nd stitch, which meant we put an extra stitch in every 2nd space. For this round, we're going to put an extra stitch in every 3rd space. So we put 1 in that, we put 1 in there, and then we're going to put 2 in that one. So I hope that's starting to make sense, because in the later rounds, I'm just going to kind of tell you the stitch count and leave you to it. So we're not spending too much time just sort of watching my hands work away and hearing me babble. So all the way around, you're going to put 1 and then 1 and then 2 in that one. And I will meet you when you're back at that stitch marker to show you what we do in the next round. It's time for round 5. So if you don't like counting stitches, you are going to love round 5, because all we are doing is putting 1 puff stitch into each stitch space from the round below. We're doing what's called a shaping round, which means we're starting to give our flat circle a little bit of shape. It's going to, by the end of this round, start curving up a bit. So I'll leave you to go nuts and just put 1 stitch in each space all the way around, and I'll meet you when you hit that stitch marker to walk you through the next round. And that's the end of round 5, and we no longer have a plate, we have a little bowl. So we're on track with this hat, guys. And we're going to head into round 6, and round 6 is another increase round, so we're back to counting. And for this round, our pattern repeat is to increase every 4th stitch. So you do that and I'll meet you at the beginning of the next round. And 50. And we'll get into round 7. Take that stitch marker out. Don't lose it. It rolled away. Okay, so round 7 is another increase round. And we're going to increase every 5th stitch, which means we'll put 1 puff of 4 stitches, and then we'll put 2 puffs in that 5th space. And I will meet you back at the stitch marker. In round 8, we put an increase in every 6th stitch. So I will leave you to do that, and I'll meet you when you have 70 stitches, and I'll show you what we do next. At the end of round 8, we have a circle, obviously, but I'm getting my tape measure out to show you. It should be about 3.5 inches from the center to the edge, or in centimeters, that is about 9 centimeters. So I'm not expecting you to get your tape measure out. I just thought you might like to eyeball it to reassure yourself that you're on track, because when you first make a pattern, you can start to worry that you've got it wrong somewhere. So hopefully that is reassuring, not causing panic. Heading into round 9, it's a shaping round. You're going to love it. Just put 1 puff stitch into each stitch space in the round below and meet me at the end of the round. Round 10 is the last increase round for the slouchy. We're going to put an increase in every 7th stitch, which will take our stitch count up to 80. So if you'd like to pause the video here and meet me when you have done that, I'll show you how we tackle the next few rounds. That, my friends, was the last increase round of the beanie. For the next few rounds, we're just going to be putting 1 puff stitch into each stitch space in the round below. Our stitch count will remain steady at 80, and we're going to be building up our slouchy so it's big enough to fit your head and so it's got some slouch. For me, I'm going to be working rounds 11 through to 20 in this way. The number of rounds you do will depend on how slouchy you want your beanie to be. I wouldn't go for less than rounds 11 through to 19, or I think you'll have no slouch at all. But you may want to go for, I don't know, 11 through to 25 even if you want a lot of slouch. Do keep your stitch marker going so that you can keep track of how many rounds you've done. And I'm going to pop back in just a moment with my beautiful model who is going to show you how my beanie looks at round 20 before it gets a band on it, which will give you an idea when you've got your beanie on your own head of how you might like it to look before it has the band. I'll see you in just a moment. Hey everyone, this is my mum. Say hi, Mum.
Hello everyone.
Mum's wearing the nearly finished slouch. It hasn't got a band on yet. So, Mum, can you show them that it's not like how it sits around your ears?
Yeah, when it's just flat on your head, it's like that. But
Yeah.
when it's going to be a slouchy, it'll come back like that, and lots of room here.
Yeah, so basically pop your hat on your head and imagine there's a band on it. So pull it back so you've got like 2 fingers worth of extra space like Mum's got there. And it should be really loose around your ears because our hat band is going to bring it in really tight. And Mum, if you turn sideways and just, yep, like that. See how it's sitting at the back of her head? There's a fair bit of extra space there. That's where the slouch will be. Okay, bye Mum.
Bye.
Now that we've met my lovely mum, we have to get into the hard work of the band. So you're going to need a 2nd stitch marker. We're going to count back 11 stitches. And we're going to pop a stitch marker into the top of that. Now, the band of this slouchy is worked in half double crochets, half double crochet decreases, half double crochet camel, and half double crochet camel decreases. So there's a few variations on the same stitch, but I will walk you through each of them, and we're going to start with just a standard half double crochet. So we're starting with the easiest version. Yarn over and insert our hook into the top of the stitch. We've got 2 loops in the stitch. We yarn over and pull through the stitch so we have 3 loops, and then we yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. That's a standard half double crochet. Pop your stitch marker in the top of that one so that you can find the beginning of the round. Our next stitch is a half double crochet decrease, which is a stitch that's worked over 2 stitches in the row below. So we yarn over and insert our hook into the stitch and yarn over and pull up a loop. Now we insert our hook into the next stitch along and we yarn over again and pull up another loop. So we've got 4 loops on the hook and we're connected to 2 stitches below. We yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops. Our next 2 stitches are standard half double crochets. So yarn over and insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. And again, yarn over and insert your hook and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Now we're doing a half double crochet decrease over those 2. So yarn over and insert your hook and pull up a loop. Go into the next stitch and pull up a loop. We've got 4 loops and we're attached to those 2 stitches below and we're yarning over and pulling through all 4. Then the next 2 stitches are both normal half double crochets. So that is 1 and then another normal half double crochet. And our next stitch is a half double crochet decrease. So yarn over and insert your hook. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Insert your hook into the next stitch and pull up another loop. You've got 4 loops, you yarn over and go through all 4 of those loops. Okay, so we are now working normal half double crochets in each stitch until we reach that stitch marker that we popped in at the beginning of the round, the one that we counted back 11 stitches to place. So pause the video here and meet me when you reach the stitch marker. Here we are at that stitch marker, and I got you to put this in so that we would know where to put a decrease. And so we're going to put a half double crochet decrease in over those 2 stitches. Yarn over and insert your hook and pull up a loop. Insert your hook in the next stitch and pull up another loop. We've got 4 loops on the hook. We yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops. Pop your stitch marker into the top of that one. We'll need to find it when we come to the next round. Our next 2 stitches are normal half double crochets. So work 2 of those, 1 there and the second one there. And now we need to do a half double crochet decrease over the next 2 stitches. Our next 2 stitches are 2 normal half double crochets, 1 and 2. And now a half double crochet decrease over these 2 stitches. And the last stitch for this round is a normal half double crochet. So for the next round and for all of the rest of the hat, we are going to be working camel stitch half double crochets. We'll still be working a few decreases, but all of the stitches are going to be camel stitch. Normally we work a stitch under these 2 loops, but for a camel stitch, we insert our hook under this loop at the back here. We're still going to be working a half double crochet, so we yarn over, insert our hook into that back part of the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. And then we've got 3 loops on our hook, we yarn over and pull through those 3 loops. Pop your stitch marker in the top of that one so that we can find the beginning of the round when we come back to it. And our next stitch is a half double crochet camel stitch decrease. So watch really closely if you're not familiar with camel stitch. I'm going to work over those 2 stitches, but we're going into the back. I'm turning them over so you can see where we're going. Under that loop there and that loop there. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. You've got 3 loops on the hook and you insert into the camel stitch part of the next stitch and pull up another loop. We've got 4 loops. We yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops. Our next stitch is a camel stitch half double crochet, not a decrease. So we're working into that stitch, to that back bit just there. Yarn over and insert your hook. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Our next stitch is a camel stitch decrease, worked over the top of the decrease in the round below, which you might be able to see over those 2 stitches. So yarn over, going to insert just there first. Yarn over and insert, yarn over and pull up a loop. Insert into the next stitch, that stitch there, but into the back of it. Yarn over and pull up a loop. We've got 4 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. Our next stitch is a half double crochet camel, not a decrease. So yarn over, that's the top of the stitch. We're turning so we can see the back. Insert into there and pull up a loop. Yarn over and pull through all 3. Another decrease now over these 2 stitches. I'm turning them so that you can see the back of the stitches. Yarn over and insert into the back of the stitch there and pull up a loop. And then insert your hook into the next stitch, the back of it, and pull up another loop. We've got 4 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through all 4 of those. From here, we're going to work half double crochet camel stitches into each stitch. And you can pause the video and meet me when you reach our stitch marker, which marks where we need to put some more decreases in. So unpause when you get to here. But just quickly, if you are really struggling with the camel stitches, they do actually get easier the further around the round you get, because the more camel stitches you do, the more they push the other stitches around to the side, so the camel stitch part of it becomes easier to get into. But if you just can't get the camel stitch to work for you, you could try changing my half double crochet band for a single crochet band, and you could try working back loop single crochets where I have worked camel stitch half double crochets. That will still give you a lovely band. It'll have a ribbed effect. It'll look really nice. It won't have the same stretchiness. Anyway, drop me a message if you have trouble and I will give you some other options that could work for you. Otherwise, I will see you at the stitch marker. So you know what this stitch marker means, but these are the last decreases in the slouchy, so you can fling this stitch marker away now. We do not need it anymore. Alright, we're going to work a camel stitch half double crochet decrease. So yarn over and insert your hook into the back of that stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch and pull up another loop, then yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops. Our next stitch is a half double crochet camel, not a decrease, just one of those. And we're going to work another decrease now over the next 2 stitches. So yarn over and insert your hook, pull up a loop, then go into the next stitch, to the back of it, and pull up another loop. We've got 4 loops, yarn over and pull through all 4. Our next stitch is a half double crochet camel, not a decrease. Just one of those. And the last stitch for this round is our last decrease for the band. So yarn over and insert into that stitch, pull up a loop, and go into the back of the next stitch, pull up another loop, yarn over and pull through all 4. All right, so we have 3 more rounds of band to work, and they are just going to be worked in half double crochet camel stitch, 1 stitch in each. Do you see the effect we're getting from the camel stitch, the way it's sort of pushing the top of the stitches sort of around to face to give that nice little V shape? No doubt you're also noticing the way the camel stitch brings the band in, which is why I love it for a hat band. It makes for a nice snug fitting hat. It does limit how wide you can make your band, because if you just keep working camel stitch, you get a tighter and tighter band. Anyway, I will leave you to work your last 3 rounds, and I will get you to unpause when you're ready to finish off the slouchy. And this, my friends, is the last stitch in the band, and therefore in the whole slouchy. Yay! All we need to do now is bring in those scissors. I love this moment. But we do still need to weave in the tails. So I know a lot of people like to chain one and tighten it up and secure like that, but I like to actually sew my end, creating a kind of fake stitch to give it a really neat finish. So you do you with your tails. I'm going to sew mine in. Okay, so I like to take my needle underneath the top of a stitch, and since we've been doing camel stitch, I'm going kind of a little bit camel stitch style, and then I pull the yarn up and put my needle down through the top of that stitch, and it creates what looks like the top of a normal crochet stitch, which I think is a very neat finish. But of course you do still need to weave your tails in properly, otherwise that very neat looking stitch just immediately comes unraveled. But there you are. I think it looks nice. I'm just going to weave this in now. And we've also got to secure that magic circle, make it nice and tight, and weave it in securely. Time to put a button on it. So either you can fold it in half and make sure you really have it in half. That's my stitch marker that's marking the middle at the back. Or you can put it on your head. For me, when I'm laying it flat, I position it 2 fingers in from the edge of the brim, and that's 2 fingers in on the brim when I haven't worn the hat, because obviously that stretches the band and drastically changes where it would sit. If you're putting it on your head to figure it out, I recommend you mark a spot that you want it with a stitch marker to make it easier to sew it on and not lose that spot. You just use a little bit of your leftover yarn and you weave your end in, then you attach the button, and then you weave your end in again to fasten the button on, and then you are done. Hey, well done, you made it to the end. I hope you like your new slouchy. If you enjoyed the tutorial, click like, and I hope I'll see you next time. Bye.